A very good morning. Well, being a voice artist, I am often being asked a question: what does the future look like for me with the rise of AI or artificial intelligence? Even though I am not a linguist, I thought of looking at the whole question from the point of view of language. And when I was asked to come here and talk, I felt it is very important for us to address the way we are moving with the times, with technology, and especially AI, and how the language is also becoming a big part of it. Language is the roadmap of a culture. It tells you where people come from and where they are going, says Rita Mae Brown. And how does the language evolve? First, a set of few individuals start uttering a set of words which seem meaningful only to them. And then slowly the community gets bigger, reaching hundreds, thousands, and then probably millions of people. And then it becomes widely known, isn't it? Evolution of languages is probably not as simple as this, probably, but it sure gives us a sense of how the journey is. Language, as such, is a powerful tool which has the capability of both uniting and dividing us. And in this age of hyperconnectivity, language is evolving at an unprecedented rate. In fact, I come from a very small village, a remote village, so to say, but not a remote village anymore with this age of technology and interconnectedness, the globalization that we saw in the last 3 decades. Everything is now available at the click of a button. The rapid access to information, has made everything happen at the snap. Right. We are all connected within no time. But things were different when I was growing up. As I said, I come from this very small village which had only a couple of thousand people with different linguistic backgrounds from the coastal part of Karnataka. I belong to a community which speaks Havyaka or Havigannada, which is said to be a form of Kannada. And then, I learned the language as we all learn our languages from our parents, right? They spoke Havyaka at home, and I naturally learned the language. And then came Kannada at school and the surroundings. And Tulu, another language, was something pretty much everyone in coastal Karnataka learns naturally because it's also culturally connected to the region. Um, so, as I finished third or fourth standard, I could communicate in at least three languages. Most of us Indians live in a multilingual society, so this was not a big deal at all. Then came English and Hindi, the fourth and the fifth languages in our lives. No matter how much ever you try, these languages will remain the fourth and the fifth languages, isn't it? I think most of us relate to it. Yes, I do. Anyway, so, but there was a difference when I was growing up. That was about 2 to 3 decades ago. They were not entirely alien to us since television and radio had already stepped into our lives with content in these languages. Though the real impact happened when we had the next biggest breakthrough. social media. It began like this to me. There were days, I mean, this is not like how you guys are looking at social media at all, because it was the days of SMS chatting, where every letter mattered, not just words, because everything costed money. So if we were to say, hey, come soon, meet me at the canteen at 11 a.m., can't wait, this is how we had to type it, or probably even shorter to make it adjust. I've just given you a demonstration, and with a touch of the personalization at the end, the wink. I think some of you may or may not recognize this because you have, the most animated smileys that evolved later. That's the birth of, that's the baby of the smileys, I would say. Remember, I began by quoting Rita Mae Brown. Language is the roadmap of a culture. It tells you where its people come from and where they are going. Our language is taking us. Go back. Go back to. Our language today is taking us towards a technological roller coaster. From shorthands. I don't know if you've heard of shorthands, but from there to short forms, to message, to hashtags, to smileys, the way we communicate has changed quite drastically in the last few decades. Press, television, radio may have impacted the way we have been communicating. There was some homogenization in the way we use our language across the world in the last few years. But the real impact of recent developments in social media is mammoth in nature if you look at the way it has been shaping the way the world is communicating. In fact, globalization has profoundly impacted the mass communication process. While it connects people across borders, it also poses a significant threat to linguistic diversity. While we have more choices to eat from different menus from across the globe, increasingly there are less languages on the global menu today. Here is this chart that shows you how it looks. There are about 7,105 living languages in the world, yet a staggering 1,481 languages are endangered and 906 are on the verge of extinction, according to a study done by Ethnologue. The rest are in various active stages, apparently. And in fact, this organization has been studying global languages for the last 80 odd years. And in the next 90 years or so, in the next 100 years, 90% of these 7,000 odd languages are going to go extinct, is what Ethnologue is predicting. That's a really alarming trend, because the alarming decline in the language is The way we use the language highlights the way the globalization has hit the language usage in the last couple of years. And this has been fueled by various factors, probably the lack of government support, social pressure to adapt a dominant language, etc. So let me tell you a story again from my village, because this starts from 118 years ago. This is the school that I studied in, and that's where I studied. And it had been teaching thousands and thousands of students for the past 117, 18 years. But recently, total number of students have been on the decline, mainly because the closest towns were attracting all the students, mainly because they were English medium. And recently, if you can see the construction happening on this side, in fact, if you can see here, this is where I did my first, second, third, and fourth standard studies, and those were like where I did my the rest of my primary studies. So the first part was destroyed last year, and this is where it is now. Mainly because they realized that if we don't have English medium, people will continue going there and we'll not have a school to call our own in the coming days. That's how the future is looking. This is not the story of just one village. It's the story of a lot of villages, not just the villages, but a lot of cities as well. I'm not saying I'm not saying there are people who do not want their children to learn in local language or their mother tongue at all. But the very fact that the dominant language like English gives us more opportunity itself becomes the reason why more and more people prefer that medium for studies. Even, the loss of linguistic diversity goes hand in hand with the erosion of cultural identity. Language is deeply intertwined with our cultural heritage, traditions, and worldview. When we lose our languages, we lose a crucial part of who we are, our connection to our ancestors, and the unique cultural expressions that have evolved over generations. This homogenization of languages can lead to a sense of cultural displacement and a loss of connection to our roots. In fact, through the rapid homogenization of languages, regional accents and dialects are becoming less prominent in voiceover work as well, as clients often prefer a more neutral accent. If I do this in voiceovers, people will not like it. They want somebody to sound like this, or somebody even more. I'm still trying to get there. But yeah, so that's a different story. That's my profession altogether. But to get here, to get to this level, I have been practicing since that's my profession. But otherwise, I think in Kannada, I think in Havyaka, because that's my primary language. But that's where I am coming to. When I came here and met the organizers and communicated to them in English, I clearly felt a bit of uneasiness, both in me and them. But once we got into our own mother tongue, Kannada, we all felt at home, at ease. I mean, at least I felt so. But slowly, this sense of mother tongue itself is going away because of various factors. So let's not delve into the depth of it, because one is we are getting into the globalization era and people are living in different regions and mixing with different linguistic backgrounds and so on and so forth. That's for another day, probably. But before I conclude, I began by telling you something about AI. So let's get back to AI and let me spend some time on AI. How should I put it? The hero or the villain of the present world? We don't know yet, isn't it? First of all, the question is, will AI save or kill the dying languages and dialects? In fact, it is not in the hands of AI, it is entirely in the hands of humanity to understand why a language is the key to preserving the culture and identity. And the very essence of diversity lies in the fact that it is not homogeneous. So that's also something that we need to understand and make sure that we use all these languages and use AI to keep the diversity alive. We need to also start seeing AI as a tool and not as a threat. As every new technology that comes our way, we are yet to figure out the future of AI and its ways. A lot of developments, protests, setbacks, and regulations later, it will surely settle down to take a proper shape soon. Hopefully, or not. Artificial intelligence has the potential to be both a savior and a threat to endangered languages. AI powered tools can also be used to generate language learning resources, develop translation tools for endangered languages, and even help to revive dormant languages through digital platforms. But who would actively do that? Who would actually do that? Do we actually care? We need to think about it. In fact, if not used ethically, AI could even kill even more languages and force more and more people to succumb to the most dominant languages in the world. Like my friend was telling the other day, how his kid has predominantly been thinking and reacting in English, even when everyone at home speaks to her in Kannada, just because all the feed that she was getting was in English. AI driven content recommendation systems have already been contributing to the dominance of mainstream languages, limiting exposure to diverse linguistic expressions. Being a voice artist, I can see that a lot of international and national voiceover work is slowly slipping away from the hands of artists. The storm has still not hit the regional languages. So, in a way, being a Kannada voice artist mainly, I am still safe to a certain extent, but yet I have to be prepared. But whatever it may be, all these tools are developed for the use of humans. Hence, it would only make sense if it benefit us all ultimately, isn't it? So, one way or the other, we will all know the real picture only when the dust settles. All we can do is to hope for the best. Thank you.